headphones on. I have them right here, in fact, actually. Hit me with some, can you freestyle on the beat for me real quick, Steven?
Yeah. Mayor Murray in the studio, about to kick it with the boy in the beard.
There we go.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Boy in the Beard, Season 2, Episode 1.
Episode 1, Season 2.
Here we go again. So we mixed it up a little bit. It's more of a kind of a chill, relaxed space. We've got Mayor Stephen Murray, small business owner, small town mayor, hometown mayor, in the studio with us today, and we're going to get a little bit of insight from Stephen on childhood dreams, what it's like to be the hometown mayor,
The dawn of Kazoos.
the dawn of Kazoos, and just some insight from Stephen and what it takes to be in politics in a small town. Stephen, we appreciate it.
Hey man, good afternoon. I'm so excited and honored to be here, especially to kick off Season 2.
Oh man, we couldn't have anybody else in the studio except you.
You've got a really great space here. I just want to come hang out on the couch.
Oh man,
even when you're not recording.
You're always welcome.
I'm start showing up now.
Please, we do that enough with some other people in town, but you're more than welcome to come in and just hang out.
This is almost our break room too, in an office day.
It is. So you've got history with this building.
I do.
So we're located in Port Royal,
Yep.
10028 behind the shed. And what's your history here?
Yeah, so in Beaufort High School, freshman year, I had to pick an elective, and it was either theater or studio art. And I figured that I could sort of BS my way through theater, and like theater art, or art, I'd have to actually tangibly produce work. So I took theater and got really excited about it. Ended up becoming the theater manager here at the Shed for several years while I was in high school. Helped renovate this space and put up lots of shows.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in this building, and it feels like coming home.
Yeah, I can imagine. What year was that roughly?
So this was mid to late 90s, so
Okay.
probably 95, 96 through 99, which was a heyday for live and performing arts in Beaufort, Port Royal, in our area. We had multiple dance companies, multiple theater companies, traveling groups that would come through from time to time. We had a Southern Circuit film series with shorts that we'd show every quarter.
That's awesome.
Downstairs, we had a monthly coffee house with live music and spoken word poetry right here in the Shed.
Really?
So it was a really exciting time for art and for performance arts and creatives in our area back then. So and it was cool to be sort of the center of it right here at the Shed.
And before Port Royal was cool, coastal, and far from ordinary, it was really cool, coastal.
Port Royal's always been sort of cool, coastal, far from ordinary.
Yeah.
As the mayor of the neighboring town in Beaufort, I've always joked that like when I get run out of Beaufort, I'm moving to Port Royal because I love it in Port Royal, and it's exciting that we have such great sister cities.
So let's talk first about, obviously, Kelly and I were talking this morning, and she had I kind of just riff off her some questions. And what did you want to be when you grew up? Initially, what was your first goal?
It changed a lot, man.
Okay.
I wasn't really sure what exactly I wanted to be. My mom worked in a corporate environment and worked really hard, a lot of long hours. I don't think she really enjoyed it very much. My dad, on the other hand, always kind of had his own business, was a small business owner, and I liked the flexibility that he sort of had. So I think early on I knew I kind of wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I'm a bit type A. I like to challenge authority a bit. So it just sort of made sense for me to kind of go into my own pursuits.
Right.
But it ranged from I wanted to be a Marine Corps helicopter pilot for a while.
Okay.
I was going to go into the Marine Corps. I thought about the Coast Guard for a little while. I was going to be an actor. I was going to be a technical theater director and a rigger.
Right.
It was a little all over the place.
Yeah, which I think is typical for most youths.
Yeah.
But living in a smaller town, I'm sure you had bigger aspirations. Nobody wants to stay in their small hometown, which kind of drives you for your advocacy for keeping the young folk in town now.
Yeah, I think, you grow up in a small place, you sort of take it for granted and say, I can't wait to get the heck out of here. And that was certainly, my desire.
Right.
And I left for about 9 years. And as I got a little older, I got to see more of the world and to experience different places and kind of come back here. One day, we just sort of said, this place is really pretty cool.
Right.
It's got a lot of things that align with where we're trying to go in life. And then what I like about one of the benefits of the growth of our region is that it's easier to get to places now. So it's nice to have Charleston and Savannah within
Sure.
an hour or so.
Yep.
And then with the regional airports, now you can jump, on a direct flight more and more places
Yes,
every
you
year.
don't necessarily feel as isolated in Beaufort as
Yeah.
you did once at one point.
Yeah. I mean, we were the end of the road. I mean, and I mean, still are in some
Yeah.
accounts. But like, I love New York City.
Right.
I love New York City. But for like a week, a year, and then I like to come home and like decompress and be here.
There's nothing more enjoyable than living in a small town, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I've lived, a couple different places overseas and throughout the United States, and the sense of walking into a gas station or Lowe's or anywhere and you see somebody. So I can't even imagine for you. I've been here 26 years, so
Oh wow. Okay.
quite a while.
Yeah.
But I'm not the stature of
Yeah.
you know.
You know everybody, man.
I do know quite a bit of people. I'm sure, hopefully on positive notes, depending on what age I was at when I first moved here. I was.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I'm excited
Okay.
to be here, because you guys are two of the hardest working guys in Beaufort.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
not only the hardest working, but the quality of your work.
Thank you.
As a small business owner myself, it's easy to delight people one time, right? But to do it consistently, like that's
Yeah.
what separates the good from the great.
Correct.
And so I put, SK
you.
and what y'all do,
Thank you.
and the many different things that you do, right? Like, so you're in the vinyl and the sign
Yeah.
work and the social media work and the
Yeah.
video production and
And I don't know where that comes from. So initially, and not to talk about us, but I was in the restaurant business for 23 years, and when that was coming to an end, I self-taught graphic design probably the last 2 or 3 years. So I was working probably 78 hours a week with my last company. And when I get home, I'd work on the computer, teach myself certain things, and then we left in 2014, started working with David Felver at Felver Design, learned that trade. The opportunity came to buy the shop, and as both grew, I didn't want to get rid of one because the revenue from one helped with this one and vice
Right.
versa. So for you, from a shirt standpoint, was that your first business?
No, so I, going all the way back to teenage years, I had a pretty good landscaping business, cutting grass. And then I worked for some folks. I worked for the Cotters here at the shed.
Okay.
I worked for Steve Brown Catering in the catering business. I learned I didn't want to be in food and beverage because, man, that's a hard business to be in.
It's very emotional.
I had a sound production business on Hilton Head Island for a while as an independent contractor. I had a carpet cleaning business
Wow.
for a little while. We had a tutoring business in Florida with about 40 employees in 4 locations.
Wow.
Then I've been in the Kazoo business for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And
Working-
then the shirt business is 11 years old, I guess, this year, 12
Okay.
years old.
I
Go
feel
ahead.
like everybody should work in F&B at least once.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like that's
'cause-
critical.
Yes.
It's a critical part of the experience because for some reason in our society and culture, food is so deeply ingrained. You're just constantly exposed to the food and beverage industry, and you can operate as a customer
there's
so
not
much
enough
more
empathy
smoothly.
for those that
Yeah.
work in that.
Yeah,
space.
and
Yeah, I've said
that
before you're allowed
empathy-
to go dine out, you should have to go
That empathy
be a
yields
server.
better
Exactly.
service
Yes.
as a customer.
Yeah.
So it really benefits everybody.
It does, and especially now with everybody being shorthanded
Mm-hmm.
and nobody really wanting to work with all that stuff that's going on there, it's put a lot of strain on those that do have to go and that want to go in and work. And
Yeah.
some horror stories that I've heard and read about on how customers are reacting,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not even.
Everybody's
it's,
got the
you
horror
know.
stories.
So, how did the T-shirt business come to fruition?
Well, I mean, kind of similar to you guys, you look for opportunity,
Yeah.
and then you also have sort of an interest in how you challenge yourself and how you sort of grow as a person. When I talk to kids now, I tell them it's okay if you don't know what you want to be when you grow up. I mean, I just turned 40. I still don't know what I want to be when
Yeah.
I grow up. But the ability to be a lifelong learner, right, to be interested in things and to be able to analytically sort of dive into something to build your skill sets. I think for me, to have that diversity of background, right? I can do shirts, I know kazoos, now I know some politics. I can set tile, I can paint, you know, so I'm convinced that no matter what happens, I can go make a living doing something.
And that's going to build your confidence as a person in general. The fact that you know that you've got
Being
this skill set,
well-rounded.
and that if it comes that you don't know, you can learn it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so exciting, especially now with the internet and with technology.
Oh.
I mean, there's a YouTube video for
everything.
for everything, right?
And if not, you can make one.
Yeah. And from a guy, you know, I didn't come from a family with money. And so I knew if I wanted economic security that I was going to have to work really hard to build that. And so I think, you know, having and like you guys, I had the primary business, which has been Kazoos all along.
Right.
And then I've been able to sort of come in and out of different opportunities over
Yeah.
time. always having kazoos to kind of fall back on
Right.
if something else didn't work
Yeah.
out. But shirts, digital garment printing came out 15 years ago. I just fell in love with the technology, this idea that you could have a design and then print it right on the t-shirt.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I came home and told my wife, I was like, I really want to buy one of these machines. And she's like, Stephen, you can't just go buy a $25,000 piece of equipment for fun. So I was like, okay, well, let's put a business model around it. So we
Right.
built a little business plan. No one locally was using that kind of tech.
Really? So they were just all doing screen printing. You were the first to do DTG.
We were the first DTG in town.
Yeah.
And so for short run, for small businesses where you don't need a pile of shirts,
Right.
or if you want to do like a lot of different designs, or
Yeah.
you're a bunch of different colors and a bunch of detail, there's a certain market segment that you
Yeah.
just can't get in.
Plus, you can
in
service
silkscreen side.
individuals.
Yeah.
A lot of places
Yep.
they just thumb their nose at a singular person
Right.
walking in because they're focused on entities, corporations,
And I'm
businesses.
sure pricing is beneficial as well because you're not charging per screen per color, kind of a setup.
Yeah, there's almost no setup. You
Yeah.
know, as long as the art's ready to go and can be
Right,
printed.
right.
I mean, the inks are more expensive. The machinery is a little more expensive. And then since then, we had folks coming in wanting embroidery, and we were turning that away. I hate turning work away.
I hate saying no.
So we brought embroidery in a couple of years after that.
Yep.
And then we were turning some silkscreen stuff away because high quantity, low colors, 1-2 colors,
Right.
it's still more cost effective to go the silkscreen route. So we added silkscreen. We brought that in-house a few years ago.
Is that all hand? Is it so the typical by hand or is it
It's-
the new?
It's still manual.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're right at the cusp, I think, where we're doing that cost benefit to,
Yeah.
to realize whether or not bringing an automatic in-house is going to be the right thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure someone's done the research as far as a labor standpoint and
Yeah.
what that cost is and what they say it's going to save you.
And that's, yeah, I mean, it all dependent on your shop and,
Yeah.
how many jobs you're doing, how many colors, how many quantity.
Right, for sure.
Because the setup on the automatic's a little more
Yeah.
labor intensive.
Can I say I'm absolutely? I love the fact that you have the kazoo business, right? See, something about me is I have a great childlike sense of wonder, and my goodness, I love the fact that I came from California, moved to a small town where the mayor grew up in the town, and he's like the only producer of kazoos on this entire hemisphere,
Yeah.
basically, of casted kazoos, I suppose.
Well, God bless America. Injection molded.
It is the
Yeah.
injection molding.
Yeah.
It is the best tidbit of all time for when I'm talking to my friends back
Thank you.
home. And the museum shaped up in a way that I could not have possibly imagined. That is not what pops into my head when I say the words kazoo factory or kazoo museum.
Yeah, your design team did a fantastic job and everybody just killed it.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what I think is one of the cool things about life is you come across people and their talents, and
Yep.
in those few instances in my life where the talents have combined just sort of perfectly
Yep.
to put a product that I don't think we would have been able to do
Yeah.
sort of individually. And so even you guys were a huge part of making
Thank you.
the new museum just the really cool space. We're gonna
Yeah.
have a party in August. We're
Okay.
ready to set the date. So
Good.
I think it's a must see. I'm going to be completely
Hope
honest.
you come
Anybody who
celebrate.
visits me, I'm saying we're
Yeah.
headed to the kazoo museum. What's the official?
There's no
the
age
history
cap.
museum?
I mean, I think anybody of any age could walk in there, and so you got the older generation, which probably has more hands-on experience from kazoos
Right.
when they were younger, and then the young kids that they learn that as a, which I'm sure some of the parents get aggravated
yeah.
quickly because of those. But I'm going to stop in soon and get some stock photos for the
Yeah,
CVB,
anytime.
and so nothing too crazy.
right.
It's a wonderful invention, a musical instrument that anyone can play.
It's very democratic, right? So I think politically, it sort of aligns with my philosophy, and it's also fun. It's just
Yeah.
a sort of like fun, whimsical instrument, and I really get a kick out of making stuff in America because I think, the Industrial Revolution and our ability to produce things is really what, pushed us ahead as a society and as a global leader.
huge.
And so being able to hang on to certain elements of our manufacturing, even though it's a little whimsical kazoo, is fun for me.
So who you produce for a lot of folks? Who's
Films too, correct?
so in your opinion, what are you most proud of producing kazoos for? Whom?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I see some of these music artists. Rihanna Giddens, who was with the Carolina Chocolate Drops.
Yeah.
She's probably the world's best kazoo player right now. And so watching a true artist
Yeah.
who's proficient with the instrument, who's taken the time to sort of practice and can get just crazy sounds out of these things that we produce, that brings me a lot of pride. Also, when we have factory tours, to see a multi-generation family, come in, spend 45 minutes with us, learn all about the instrument. And then at the end, when they get to build their own kazoo and they play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star together,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's smiling.
Oh, yeah, of
right?
course.
I mean, there's a fun hater or two
Yeah.
always thrown in there. But I think in today's world where we're a little down on ourselves, I mean, you turn on the news or you turn on your social media feed, there's just a bunch of negative stuff coming at you all the time.
Yeah.
Just go down
So
and
one of the
make
things I like
Kazoo.
about Kazoo is that it for a moment, right? For a moment, you forget about all that nonsense, and it brings just sort of pure, unadulterated joy
Right.
to your face and to this group of people you're with when you
Right.
first get the Kazoos. And that brings me a lot of fulfillment, because I think we need to celebrate a little more in life. I think we need a little more joy in our lives.
I think we do
Yeah,
too.
oh, yeah.
It's-
People think they need to justify every action, and I'm always like, you're not familiar with doing what you want, I see. I'll be building a kazoo and having the time of my life down at Stevens Kazoo Factory
Yeah.
while you're, looking at your dividends and bottom lines all day.
Yeah.
Taking
And
an hour to go do something fun.
So I struggle with that.
Yeah,
With-
we all
with-
do, right? Especially as we get older and we have all
Yeah.
these responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's hard to I mean, I have the benefit of having 2 7-year-olds at home.
That's huge. Yes.
Vicarious living.
Yes.
So they're constant reminders of,
Yeah.
of being kids,
Yeah.
and helping me reframe how I see the world.
Yeah, because you get to see it from a different angle. And one of my regrets would be having kids at a young age. I appreciate it now because I'm older and I have the freedom to kind of do what I want to do. But at the same time, I'm a different person now than I was when I was in my early 20s and had kids.
Yeah.
So I do wish later in life I would have had kids to be able to appreciate just what you literally just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from a small business standpoint, before we get into politics, what challenges have you come across, as I say, in the t-shirt business? What are your challenges, and what would be some advice that you would give somebody?
Well, so I've had the blessing of having a lot of great business mentors come into my life. And so like the Shed, for example, Pete Cotter and Karen Cotter, who started the Shed, Pete had the contract at the port bringing in kaolin. And so that was sort of the cash cow that allowed him to put money into the Shed to keep a community center going, which at the time wasn't so remarkable. But as thinking back, that what they gave, right, to Port Royal and what
Yeah,
they
of
gave to
course.
the community to try to make this work is pretty just unbelievable. But the way he was creative in his thinking, and he would pull from these different industries in order to solve problems in whatever he was trying to fit today. So I guess my one piece of advice is try to think as broadly as you can, right? Don't just think like the shirt industry. And another one of my business mentors, his whole thing was, in small business, things are never as good as they seem, and they're never as bad as they seem. And so if you can take kind of a balanced approach to your successes and your failures, that sort of moderation over time, I think, lends itself to greater success.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, because we're always our worst enemy when it comes to anything, and any little small failure, you need to learn from that, and then try not to repeat that. Maybe there's going to be another failure.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's always going to happen. And then when you do have those wins, you're going to have multiple wins. That one win's you're not done.
Right.
So don't celebrate too much and then tout around. There's always going to be somebody that's going to challenge you.
Yeah. And he, and his, other advice was cost. The race to cheapest is a race that you can't win. His line was, "There's always some dumb SOB that doesn't know his margins, and he'll race you right out of business."
Right.
So for us, it's always been about trying to find the best value that we can deliver to our customers.
Right.
To do really good quality work and to take care of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the reasons, one of the cool things about growing up in the South with a bunch of grandmothers and family, is this idea of Southern hospitality, and how we treat each other and how we welcome each other. And so even when we mess up, like, we apologize, we make it right, because it's really about trying to take care of people and making sure that they're having a good experience in our organization.
I think any business is a people business, regardless
Yes.
of what you do from a production standpoint or a service or whatever. You're still in the people business, because at the end of the day, we have this interaction and we're engaging. And if I upset you, then how many people do you know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if I keep you satisfied 100% of the time, you don't tell anybody. But the one time I make you upset, you're going to tell as many folks as you have. And that's regardless
For
of.
metal kazoos.
Yeah.
That's
so-
okay, man.
I've only ever I've never even played a metal kazoo.
Yeah.
Never have, never will.
Is there a different in the tone? Is
There
the resonator?
Yeah,
Is it-
yeah. So the material itself, the type of resonator, all of those things can have a little factor. Although they're all pretty pretty close
Pretty
to
Gives
it.
it a
close to
little
it.
Yeah.
extra
To the
twang.
layman, no one's
Yeah.
really going to know, but
Yeah,
for the
exactly.
average part, yeah.
The other thing that I think is challenging about small business, but is also one of the things I really like about small business, especially from the ownership perspective, is that you have to sort of be a jack of all trades. And so you have to know a little bit about HR, you get a little bit about marketing, a little bit about how like to mechanically fix
Yeah.
the stuff in your building.
Electronics, or if it's plumbing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because you
And-
save that bottom line.
Right, and so for me, because I get a little restless, this ability to be able to be forced to jump into all of these different areas in my business is kind of exciting. But
Right.
I know for a lot of people that can also be daunting.
Yeah, exactly right. So I remember one time I'd asked you about being a mayor, or did you ever have aspirations of becoming a mayor? And if I recall, you at that time, maybe it was just telling me, but you really didn't have a big you didn't know where you wanted to be, if you wanted to move into that space. So what was the deciding factor for you that you said, okay, if it was Mayor Kaiserling is coming to terms, and then you made that decision, or what clicked for you to become running for mayor?
That's a great question. And I say we because my wife and I, and then kind of my core team, had a lot of conversations over many months about what I was going to do after Billy sort of announced. I enjoy the work of local politics. I enjoy the work of governing, but it isn't all rainbows and sunshine, right?
Right.
Like there are some sort of negative parts about the job, and I struggled with the decision a little bit. I mean,
Right.
certainly, being the mayor of my hometown is a hell of an honor, and there are a lot of cool things that come with being the mayor of my hometown. And I like being in the middle of things. I like solving problems. I like helping people. So from that perspective, like, it's awesome. But it doesn't pay very well. You have to deal with a lot of complaining folks, people complaining about whatever the issue is. And we deal with a lot of regional partners, so there's a lot of like chaos and sort of bumping up against people from time to time. But I was on council for 6 years. When Mayor Billy decided to step down, it was kind of like, who's next? And I mean, candidly, I was hoping that someone who was smarter, who understood the issues, who was going to be a little more even-keeled than me, was going to step up and say they were going to run.
Right.
But that didn't happen. And given the position of where the city is today, sort of my vision for where I think the region needs to go, at the risk of sounding like a giant egotistical politician, for better or worse, I thought, I was the guy who's sort of best suited at this moment in time to take the reins as mayor.
Right.
And so I don't want to say begrudgingly, because again, I'm honored to do it. But it wasn't a decision we made lightly.
Right.
And it was one of those, if someone else was willing to like sort of jump in, that I could have fallen in behind. I certainly would have probably stayed on council for another couple of years.
Was there anybody in your head that you thought that you would have liked to have seen run? I mean, anybody specifically?
Yeah, there was a couple of folks
Yeah.
that I'd thought about and had some quiet conversations with.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
But no one. I mean, it's a big commitment, man.
Huge.
So not a lot of folks are willing to sort of jump into it.
Because as trivial as you think the complaints are, it's the person making that complaint. It's their whole world. I mean, at that particular time, it's their biggest concern.
Yeah.
It's like their whole week dealing with that,
Yeah.
or whatever they have to do.
And I highly suggest anybody in any town go to their city council or town council meeting and listen or watch any of the board meetings that are happening from, if it's design review board or the NPC or whatever that board is. Get invested, even if it's you spend an hour of your time to see what's happening in your community.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well, and I tell folks all the time. I said we spend all this time sort of fighting or arguing about what happens at the federal level with what's going on in D.C. And the reality is like one voice complaining that the federal politicians are one vote.
right.
I mean, certainly should vote, certainly should participate, but you're in a
Operates
sea
on a
of
mass scale.
Yeah, right. When the reality is, local government is where more of the decisions about what affects your life every day
Directly,
Right, for sure.
happen
directly.
in every meeting.
Yeah.
And I think over the pandemic, some folks sort of realized how much of an impact local government can have on your
Oh, for
life
sure.
and state
Even just with
government.
the trash service switching, like I would have been completely unaware.
Yeah.
Completely unaware. And
Something as simple
any
as
other
that.
job or municipality I lived in or worked in besides this town and this job, I would have had no idea that that was happening.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I feel better than everyone else. You know, back home I'm like, oh, you don't know what the mayor's doing. You don't know what the ordinances are. Oh, wow, shucks.
Yeah. Well, it's police, it's fire, it's public works, it's our
It's
parks,
so
it's our
much.
sidewalks, it's trash pickup,
It's-
it's
yeah.
how you
It's-
can improve your property and those processes.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is ingrained into almost all elements of our daily life. And,
Yeah.
It really
so
is.
for me, I get a lot of fulfillment out of being in those conversations. And I think as a small business owner, right, we know how to like sort of solve problems.
Yep.
We know how to get the best value out of contracts and vendors. And so to take that small business perspective and in those challenges that I really like to solve, and now to like roll that work into local government work, is, for me, it's a greater challenge.
Right.
That I find a lot of fulfillment in.
I don't think folks still. I have one pet peeve. It irks me to death when I hear somebody to a police officer saying, "I pay your salary," because ironically enough, those officers are paying taxes as well. So Kelly and I had this conversation last night, but
Any public service.
Well, I don't mind.
firefighters.
I mean, I don't like that it's normally from a place of rudeness, right?
correct.
Like,
That's exactly. what
I own you, right? So
Yeah,
you should
exactly.
respond however I want you to. But where I would sort of reframe that is I do think citizens need to take a greater sense of ownership in our public spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell folks all the time, City Hall, it belongs to you.
Because you are the public.
Right,
As
parks,
the public.
it belongs to you, right? So if you see litter in the park and you pick it up, like you're cleaning up your own space.
Yeah.
The roadways, they
And you're
belong.
saving your dollars from sending people out there. I mean, you're putting money back in your pocket, really, if you
Yeah.
invest in
Yeah.
help with your
Yeah.
community.
Because we have this idea, right, that it's somebody else's responsibility,
Or
it's
job.
somebody else's
Yeah.
is ownership. And I think as a self-governing society, it requires us, again, whether we like it or not, it
To be
requires us
engaged.
to be engaged and
Yeah.
be involved.
Yeah, exactly right. And for me, it was really interesting is sitting in on budget meetings, and because one, I'm a numbers guy.
Right.
I love P&Ls. I love graphs, and then how we work things to make the most as we can. But it's funny from a citizen to see the challenges a municipality has to balance a budget and what money is allocated to trash or to repairs, new vehicles, police vehicles, or even maintenance trucks, and all that has to be accounted for.
Yeah.
And so it's really everybody should sit at least on a budget meeting, because if they have a household and they make
Yeah.
money, then
Really puts it puts it into perspective how finite everything is and how much you have to do with that finite quantity.
Yeah, because I do think some citizens think that there's just like this unlimited pot of
disposable.
money.
They think there's a backup for the backup for the backup.
Yeah,
You'll just tap into the
right.
quadruple reserve supply if you really needed to, but that's
Yeah, because in the
not-
grand scheme, I mean, the city, we've got a almost $23 million budget this year,
Yeah.
which is a lot of money, no doubt, but
when you have
compared to
take
some
care of every
companies,
facet of public living.
I mean, we're really not that large of an organization.
Right, for sure.
And I feel like we get a lot of value out of that money.
Yeah, I love these both. I love how both municipalities work together, Town of Port Royal and the City of Beaufort. And before we started working with the city, just out of grace, I talked to Van and just made sure that he didn't have any issues with conflict of interest or anything like that. So I'm glad everything worked out, because the relationships that we have with both,
Integral.
yeah, I mean, it just solidifies us as a company, and it allows us to have a little
It
bit more
lends
clout.
credibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I get frustrated sometimes when I see people who choose not to participate, right? Who choose not to go to council meetings, who choose not to watch them on Facebook, but they so easily just throw out a bunch of accusations, that either local staff in our municipalities or local elected officials, that we're all corrupt and we're in it
Right.
for to line
Yeah,
our own
for sure.
pockets,
Right,
right?
right.
And like, there's no doubt. I mean, there are plenty of articles around the state and around the country about people who have nefarious intent, right, and do bad things. But by and large, my experience at 7 years in local government now, and one of the reasons I really like being in local government is just really remarkable people that I get to work with every day.
Yeah.
And so, Van and his crew in Port Royal, the Port Royal Town Council, my council in the city of Beaufort, our staff, all of these regional partners that we work with, really intelligent, really committed, really compassionate people who get up every day trying to think about how we take care of people and how we make our communities better.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people I like to surround myself.
Everybody
now.
I've met coming into contact with working of either of the municipalities has really been a testament to the best that both of these areas has to offer,
Yeah.
from the level of politeness of someone sitting at a desk down to the actual members of council. It's actually wonderful to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are surrounded by a team of great folks. I mean, everybody.
Yeah.
We've never had a negative issue with anybody dealing with City Hall, walking in there.
I mean, from the security guards to
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's not unique to our region. And there's a lot of local governments. As I work around the state with the municipal association.
It just goes to show you, I mean, there are good people in the world.
Yeah.
It's just that we're so easily accessible to content and there's obviously agendas by some of these folks that push that out there.
Well, there's far more good people in the world than there are bad people.
There are,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, just like if we interact 100% of the time at your place, the one time I don't have a positive, I'm going to
Right.
tell everybody else. And then we just get pushed all that information.
Yeah.
How do you define success?
Man, that's kind of a broad question.
So let me rephrase that. Are you successful?
Yeah, in a lot of things I do, right? And I think, so I take my kids to school. I'm the morning guy, and I take them to school most days. And so I ask them to do a couple of things. And so one is to do something nice for somebody that day, right? I think we have a responsibility to kind of look out for people. And so I intentionally try to do something nice, even if that's just Tony, you're looking good today, man. Looking sharp with that shirt, right? And that might be the extent of the nicety that I'm able to do a day. But I also tell them to fail at something every day, because I don't necessarily look at it as failure. I look at it as learning. And I think sometimes we're nervous about doing something that we aren't comfortable doing, or if we immediately try it and fail, then it's like, oh, I'm not capable of doing that.
Right.
So P.T. Barnum said, comfort is the enemy of progress. And so I try to keep that
That's
sort
so
of
true.
in my mind, right? If I'm getting too comfortable in my job, in my life,
You're stagnating.
right? And so I need to sort of push myself to get uncomfortable. And so being mayor,
Yeah.
running for mayor was a totally different sort of initiative, extreme for me,
Right.
that puts me way out of my comfort zone. Same thing when I ran for council. And so I sort of, keep building. I mean, I ran a houseboat, a 52-foot houseboat like a month ago. Like I've never driven a 50-foot houseboat.
Yeah.
There was a little trepidation going into that
course.
experience.
You
Yeah.
always need a little stressor to keep making you, run forward.
Yeah, but so yeah, I think I look at myself as successful. I have some economic security. I have an amazing family. I have these beautiful, healthy little girls that think that I hung the moon right now because they're 7.
Yeah.
And regardless of what happens in my politics, I have this great sort of group of friends and family that love me no matter what I do.
Right.
And so, from a successful standpoint, I think I got it, man.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure.
A lot of right decisions. Probably, I'm sure everything was placed at a certain time. Have you found out, and I guess in life in general, that one scenario or some skill set that you learned here down the line has given you the opportunity to do something else later in life?
Oh, amen. Yeah. When I talk to kids, I talk about building ladders, and so one opportunity is a ladder to the next. It may not seem that way, right? I mean, when I had the catering job, when I worked for the catering, and I dumped a pan of fish down me like the first day on the job, I was like, man, this is awful, right?
Yeah.
But in that job, I learned about like customer service and like how to take care of people, because my cousin Steve Brown was all about taking care of people. I made a fruit salad for 300 people, and I cut up 2 cases of cantaloupe, and I left green on the cantaloupe. So he made me go back through and and so that taught me about like perfection and doing it the right way the first
Do it the right
time.
Yeah, exactly right. Measure twice, cut once.
And in theater, in high school, public speaking, literature, method acting, understand people's intentions and empathy and where they're coming from really helps me a lot in the mayor's job.
Right.
So absolutely, I think it's a journey where we're sort of building from one to the other.
Yeah, and if you're not learning or taking those opportunities to, even if you store them, and then the next time comes up, then it's okay, this has allowed me to do that. And same thing like when you were referencing the cantaloupe. I worked for my uncle in the restaurant business when I first started. So I graduated in 91. I moved to Texas in 91 because he was a franchisee, had, I don't know, maybe 14 locations. And to me, that's how he's, my rich Uncle Bobby.
Right.
is what my reference was. But he was probably the hardest person I've ever worked for in my life. And I'm talking, I mean, with the fact that I would have to go up there afterwards and I didn't clean the door seals properly enough. There's still some
Right.
mold because over time, obviously, the door seal affects the cooler and the cleanliness of it. And if you have a broken seal, then the air is going to emit the whole thing.
Yeah, the details.
So yeah, and that's I think why I'm so detail oriented now and everything, and then the other franchise and no, not that it was all rainbows and unicorns in that life either. I've got some horror stories. I've literally got faxes. I got a binder of faxes of conversation between one of the supervisors and I back and forth.
Right.
Because like you, I question authority to an extent.
Right.
And if someone's not being treated fairly, I want to know why, especially if it's me.
Yeah.
And what that cause is. And, I just watched HBO documentary called LFG, which is an acronym for Let's Effing Go. And it's for the U.S. women's national soccer team. And they sued the federation for unfair pay for the women compared to the men.
Right.
The women have won 3 to 4 World Cups. The men barely qualified or didn't qualify in the last round. But their revenue, they generated more revenue for one U.S. soccer, one for the most women's sports team, and they were still transported in a regular airplane as opposed. It wasn't chartered.
Right.
The bus ride, the hotels were less than set for the men, and so it took them a couple years of fighting that litigation, and then the chairman resigning, and then a woman coming in to get them where they needed to be. It's sad in this day and age that we still have to deal with racism, discrimination from a sex or from a gender standpoint, and even from your height, the way you look.
Right.
With me being 5'5", people assume I'm a lot younger than I am. You know what I mean? And it's still the way I get looked at or talked to or looked over is still, part of life for me. It always has been.
Yeah. Well, I think culturally those were the norms, right?
Yeah.
Now you call it bullying. Like back in the day, it was just sort of how we treated one another.
Yeah.
And so I think calling it out, right, and speaking up is a responsibility that we have.
Yeah, of course.
Which is difficult sometimes, especially with family members.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I think Reconstruction is so important to Beaufort and to our area, but really nationally, those stories, is because I think, so I was born in 81. I'm sorry, I'm hitting the microphone.
No, it's okay.
It's going to be like a bump now.
Yeah.
I was born in 81. I graduated high school in 99. But if you think about, the 80s to the 2020s, it's been pretty good progress, right? You feel like economically things are growing, like it's been pretty peaceful. But then when you think the context of Reconstruction, going all the way back to like the late 1800s, there was this remarkable period of progress in our country where you had slaves who were freed, and then self-governing communities, African Americans in leadership. We really were on this path to integration and in progress to achieve the real American dream. And then with Jim Crow,
we backslid a little.
So we lost a tremendous amount of progress. And I think for our generations especially, it's important to remind ourselves that progress isn't always linear.
No.
Right? It's not always going to go this one way. It's hard fought. And if we're not cognizant and we're not all speaking up and engaged, we can slide backwards.
Yep.
And I think we've seen some of that over the last 4 or 5 years.
We have.
Because in the book of Proverbs says that as steel sharpens steel, so does one man to another. And I think, again, my life, I've been blessed to be around really creative, hardworking, introspective people. And I've been just smart enough to pay attention and listen. And so that's why I like hanging out with cool guys like you who work really hard, who have broad perspectives on the world, but also, I think, have a sense of community and responsibility about how we take care of one another.
Yeah.
How many quotes do you have stored in your
I don't know, man. I really like quotes.
I'm always sad when you don't say a quote at something. I really am.
Yeah, he pulls out the right ones at the right time.
I want to do a supercut eventually.
Oh yeah, of all quotes.
Yeah.
At what point in your life did you realize? Did you start? Do you remember the first quote that kind of stuck to you or resonated with you that you were like?
I don't. There's a fine line. A buddy of mine in high school he's like, Stephen, you're so cliche. All you say is cliches all the time. And I'm like, so I still remember that 20-something years later. I try not to be that guy.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do think, while I'm really interested about the future, right, and how we move into the future and shape where we're going with the best outcome. That's sort of informed by our past.
The farther back you look, the farther forward you see.
Yeah, man. There's some really smart people who said some really smart things. And so I think trying to remember those things and,
Yeah.
and using them how we move forward.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic, and I love them. As you said, we're a little sad if we don't hear one little Stevenism.
Of course, I'm recycling a lot of them, so I've been like trying to find
new
been
ones.
trying to find some new ones.
Well, especially now being more of a public speaker and being in the eye, they're going to start someone's going to be saying, "Oh, he said that at this. He said that at that."
Right.
One
So-
day you need to drop one and then quote yourself. Just at the end of it, be like, "That was me. I said it last week."
Yeah,
Talking about this
I don't know if
part.
I'm not that cool, man. Like I have to steal other people's lines.
No, yeah, I think you're great. That's hilarious.
I guess a moment for me was I got out of high school and I went to USCB for a few weeks, and my grandfather picked up my first semester, but said like after this you're on your own, bud. Like you're gonna have to go get student loans to like pay for college, and so I did that for a few weeks and I hated it.
Right, of course.
I felt like I was like right back in high school.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was working really hard. I was working here. I had other jobs in town. I was making pretty decent money at the time for a kid just out of high school in Beaufort. So I dropped out of college, and I'm a college dropout. And
You're up there with the great, with the best of them.
well, I always thought I'd go back, and
Yeah.
I may still. Right? It's one of those
Yeah.
bucket list things. But I had to go tell my grandfather that. Not only did I drop out of college, which he was very excited about because he didn't have a college education, I was going to be like the first.
Right.
But that I had lost 50% of his tuition money. And my grandfather's parents died when he was young. He was a Depression-era child.
Oof.
He was a Pearl Harbor veteran.
Wow.
He saved every nickel. I mean, the guy emptied his own septic tank. He was so cheap.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah. And he was a very serious guy when he wanted to be. So I went over, at 18 years old, thinking that I'm going to get yelled at. I'm in trouble, right? Because I've dropped out of college, lost his
You're going
money.
to get the disappointment talk.
So I go, and deliver this news as gently as I can that, I'm working. I want to find what I want, my interest in life, and then maybe I'll go back to school. But this idea of just going to school for a general education and taking on tremendous student loan debt in order to figure it out, seemed difficult
the
for
right
me.
call.
Yeah.
So I needed to take a different path, right? So he sits there for a second, just completely silent, complete poker face. And I'm like, here it comes. I'm just waiting for it. And he very calmly says, Stephen, don't worry about the money. And don't worry about college. He said, before you know it, you're going to be an old man just like I am. He said, so fill your life with things that bring you fulfillment and happiness. And the money will come, but that's what's really important is a fulfilled life, which will lead to a happy life.
Yeah.
And at 18, I'm not sure if I was just happy that I didn't get hit.
For sure. That was your probably initial reaction was like, man, whew.
But a few years later, it sort of, the light bulb went off finally, and I think we get one shot, right?
Oh,
I look at different faiths and this idea of reincarnation or this idea of heaven or hell. Maybe all those things exist, right? They're a possibility. But what I do know is I'm breathing today.
Yeah,
I
what's
may not
relevant
be
to the
breathing
now.
later on. So we get sort of one shot while we're here, right? Let's try to make it count as much as we can. So for me, it's about trying to fill my life with things that bring fulfillment and happiness, and try to impart those things to other people now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. The impact that you make on the folks is what's going to last. Your memory's going to last in that sense versus anything else that you've done for the most part, unless we're doing bigger stuff. And for me, it's because I work and work and work and work. At the end of the day, I push off some of those certain relationships.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so Kelly and I, we have plenty of talks to where I try to, like you had said, if you do one good positive thing, for me, it's shifting that conversation to not so much about how busy I am or what I'm doing, but what do you have going on? Being a better listener as opposed to somebody talking about because I got plenty to say,
Right.
but I want to leave us, however we leave this conversation, whatever that is, if I see you on the street, that, not Sean would just bah, bah, bah at me, you know what I mean? So that's part of my learning and growing, and so.
Yeah. Well, and same for me, because I think, leaders, politicians, I think there's a lot of us that feel the need to always have to be filling the space or to always have something to say. And sometimes I've been criticized in the last 6 months about not having a message or not speaking up on certain things, and maybe that criticism is fair. But I also think right now, especially with a lot of things going on in the world, leaders, especially elected officials, we need to be listening more.
Yeah.
And we need to be paying attention to what others that we don't, normally interact with,
Right.
What's being said.
Yeah.
And not feeling the need to just respond.
Because they feel like you have to, that
Yeah.
knee-jerk reaction, and just listen and take all that in
Absorb.
there. And then analyze.
Yeah.
And then form an opinion based on what you're hearing versus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think between COVID and what happened with George Floyd, this last year was really difficult for our country and for many folks in the world, and so there's this anxiety and this tension, and fear and all. There's it's an emotional stew.
Yeah.
And humans, when we're stressed and we're anxious, and the temperature is really high, we typically don't make very good decisions.
No, of course.
And so I think that's the other sort of part about healing is the listening part, and waiting for the moment when the temperature and the anxiety and things sort of come down a bit.
Yeah.
Because I think at that moment that's the opportunity for us to go do the hard work of figuring out progress.
Right.
But I also sort of fears if you let it come down too much, then we go back to our
You'll
comfortable
backslide.
status quo life, right? And then we just sort of push these problems under the rug again. And I don't think we should let that happen either.
And that could go to anybody, and that's personal advice for any individual living at home or
Yes.
whatever.
Applicable to anything.
It is. Yeah.
Ever.
If you have somebody at your job that says something, don't just react. Sit and take it in. What's your favorite food?
Oh man, that's tough. I like to eat.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the South with two grandmothers who showed love with food.
Yes.
They were both food pushers. Yeah, and now it's our love language in our family, which is a blessing and a curse, because man, we eat good. My favorite food. I'm equal opportunity. It's hard to.
What if you could have one food in front of you right now?
It's hard to I'm craving fried okra right now, so I'd love some.
We just had fried green tomatoes at
Oh, yeah.
Anchorage.
Yeah.
Holy mother!
sound
It was
pretty
the
delicious.
most. It was such an excellent.
Yeah.
What is it called? Chow chow. It's the first time I've ever had that.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah,
relish
pickled.
type,
Yep.
pickle type situation. Oh my gosh, it was
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah. So Southern cooking, I guess, would probably be my upper room cafe right there,
Okay.
the old Sergeant White's.
Yeah.
Go in there and get a fried pork chop with some wild rice or rice perlo.
Yeah, for sure.
And then vegetables with lots of pork in there.
Nice. Favorite movie from a genre sense?
I knew you guys were going to ask me this question, and I was trying to prepare my top 5.
Yeah.
Because in my 20s, I used to watch a lot of. I was a movie buff. I had a proud DVD collection when you actually used to own content instead of just streaming
and not
now.
just license it. I don't even want to start
Yeah.
talking about streaming. I have such gripes against it. Physical all the way, baby. I still buy my Blu-rays.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay somebody to use their product and then one day they're just like,
It's about access for me. So as long as I can have some access. I mean, I was huge into Sopranos when it came out, so I owned all that from a show standpoint. Captain Ron with Kurt Russell and Martin Short when he inherits a boat and it's a kind of a goofy film. It's one of my favorites. Apocalypse Now is one of my all-time favorites. I'm a child of the '90s, so all those Quentin Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. Anything sort of action oriented.
Right.
It's kind of where I.
Is there anything that you just pop in from a feel-good standpoint that just kind of maybe brings you back a little bit or just relaxes you?
Well, that's that's the Captain Ron's.
That's
Those
okay.
late '80s, early
Yeah.
'90s movies.
I have Can't Buy Me Love, Patrick
Okay.
Dempsey,
Yep.
and then Better Off Dead with
Yeah.
John Cusack.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
those two are my go-to.
Okay. Yeah, Gross Point Blank's one of my
Oh, yeah,
greatest
yeah, great.
John Cusack films. Yeah, my wife and I both were super into music and super into movies
Yeah.
when we first met in our 20s, and now with career and kids and we both sort of we're so lame now. We don't we don't have time to
Yeah, I'm
you
sure
know.
it's pretty, especially with the girls running around and it's
Yeah.
more themed towards them. And then when you guys do have a night alone, it's not so much of a movie indulgence. It's just maybe some quality time or a
Gotcha.
good dinner and
Well, we're fortunate with the grandparents. Friday nights, the kids are normally at the grandparents. We have date night on Friday nights.
Okay.
And so that's anything from going downtown and hanging out at a restaurant and having a couple of drinks and
Now-
talking.
That's nice.
So, do you have any recommendation for young couples? What would you recommend? Obviously, you're thinking date night, and my mind goes straight because you had to make time for your spouse,
Yeah.
and you've got to be that. So, do you have any advice for any young couples, or any couples in general? Doesn't have to be
You know, when we first got married, my dad gave me, you know, happy wife is a happy life. So, you know, try to make sure your partner's happy,
Right.
It's a relationship and it requires work. I think it's easy to get complacent especially when you've been in a relationship for a while.
Yeah.
I have a lot of excuses and reasons why I can't be a good partner. That doesn't mean I should.
right, for sure.
I'm fortunate in that I have a spouse who will tell me when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And is very clear with me,
Yep.
which as a bit of a slow lizard brain I need from time
Of
to time.
course, yeah.
You know, I had our pastor, we got married, he said something like, you know, you think you love each other now, and you do, but you don't really truly love one another until you've gone through life together for a little while.
Yeah.
And you go through some family deaths, and you go through some celebrations. And then you start to understand sort of this deep love that emerges. And so now that we've been together almost 2 decades,
Yeah.
I'm starting to kind of understand that.
Yeah.
You know, for us, I think there are these gender roles, right, that we sort of talk about, like that she's supposed to be like in the kitchen and I'm supposed to be watching football or something on the couch. We've never ascribed to that sort of traditional role. And our relationship over 20 years has ebbed and flowed in the responsibility arena. So when she was getting her first master's, like I did all the housework. I cooked and cleaned and took care of all the domestic stuff, right? And same thing with kids. We have sort of a balanced relationship. It's really just a partnership.
Yeah.
And whatever has to get done to support the household has to get done.
Right, regardless of who does it.
Yeah,
It's
and so
not
I
easy.
tell, you know, some of my young dude friends that maybe has this like 1950s stereotype about how partnerships are supposed to work.
Yeah.
That, you know, maybe be a little more open-minded about how we support one another.
Yeah. I would agree 100% with that.
Yeah. So I don't know. You know, it's.
Well, I think that was it. I mean, that was enough right there.
Yeah.
That should be, you know, you don't take your partner for granted, and don't assume just because their dishes are in the sink that it's her responsibility to get those
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
If you're sitting in there putting your dish in the sink, knock them out and put them in the dishwasher, whatever your routine is.
Yeah.
You know, take the trash out when you see it. Don't wait for your wife to tell you because they don't want to be nagging all the time. And there's nothing less sexy than a woman having to tell you what to do all the time.
Yeah, you know, you're a grown man, so
Yeah, yeah.
not to
So
say
exist,
that
yeah.
you know if she was here, she would probably push back a little bit about
Yeah.
clothes on the floor or the garbage that needs to be.
It happens for
take
everybody.
it out,
I mean,
right?
Yeah, you know what I mean. But when you're trying to run the world, some things get, you know.
Well,
left
that's
behind.
You know, I mean, you know, my wife, she's got a big job. She's the director of literacy for the school district, so it's not like she's just sitting at home
No, of
with
course.
nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so I try to be cognizant of like what she's got going on
Yeah.
in her life.
Yeah. Conversation's huge. Asking about her day and how she's doing, how things make her feel or react to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that open communication. Is,
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why we don't watch a lot of TV now, because we're so damn busy with life
Right.
and keeping all the balls in the air that when we do have a moment just to be together,
Right.
it's like we probably ought to be talking to one another instead of having something on in the
Yeah,
background.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah, just to have that connection, that intellectual connection.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
So one last question: what's your favorite? So music.
Oh man, so I was thinking about that one.
Yeah.
And I one of your other guests said, you know, it's cliche to say we like everything. But one of the things I love about streaming is that I really do look at music as a buffet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm all over the place, dude. Like I love Frank Sinatra.
Right.
My grandfather, you know, loved the sort of crooners of the 50s, 60s. So I'll listen to some Dean Martin
Nice.
and some old Rat Pack stuff.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm a kid of the 90s, so I listen to some Snoop Dogg and some Dr. Dre, Metallica, Fugazi.
Nice.
I got into it's weird right now. I'll go into these phases. So I went into a brass band
Okay.
phase for
Yeah.
a few months last year in the middle of COVID. And so for like 3 months, I listened to nothing but like New Orleans brass band,
Yeah.
like lots of trumpets and trombones. I could hit a bluegrass sort of folk phase for a little while. So I'll bounce in and out of I'll listen to the top 50 charts
Okay.
on Spotify just so I can hear what the
Yeah.
kids are listening
The
to.
TikTok playlist.
Yeah, the TikTok playlist, exactly. So it's really all over the place. Anything from hardcore, like sort of gangster rap, to some metal, old school country.
Nice. Stephen, I appreciate it coming in, sitting with us. I think we learned a lot from you, from a young man standpoint to where you're at now, and what challenges you had. And we encourage everybody to take part in your local municipality, your government body, ask questions, watch meetings, and
Be empathetic.
definitely be empathetic of everybody.
Yeah, be nice.
Be nice,
You know,
that's
that's kind of, the message from COVID was extend some grace to one another. I generally think most people get up and try to do the best they can every day. You never really know what someone else is dealing with. So treat each other with respect.
And that one compliment you give somebody could change their whole day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tony's got a nice shirt on. We know that.
So,
It's a fantastic shirt. All it's missing is my vaccine button.
well, again, I'm honored to come on The Boy in the Beard,
We appreciate
especially kickoff season 2.
Season 2.
I can't wait to check it out and see the rest of season
Yeah.
2 and the guests that you're going to have on.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys later.